Hello, everybody. I'm Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch.com. And today I am here with Joanne Martin and Izzy Eisen, and they are from the American Bar Endowment Fund. And we're going to speak to them because they are a funding source. They give grants. And it's really interesting to hear about the process from the funding source side. We all know about grant writing if you've been with us long enough on GrantWatch, but let's hear today how a funding source feels when they receive a grant. Let's find out what's important to them. And this American Bar Endowment Fund does a lot of great work in the legal area. So I'm going to ask Izzy to give us a little background on the organization.
Izzy is new to the organization.
Oh, okay. Then I will ask Joanne, who's the executive director.
It's the American Bar Endowment is actually 80 years old. We've been in existence for quite a while. We're a public charity. We are independent. We are not part of the American Bar Association.
Which I'm sure there's a lot of confusion about.
Exactly, but as you might know, trying to change your name
no, not a good idea. Stay with it.
Particularly after you've had it for 80 years is not something that you might recommend. But we've been making grants for about 60 years. So this is what we do. We are a grant making organization. We are rather unique, I expect, in that where we receive the funds for our grants, we promote insurance, particularly life and disability insurance, to lawyers across the country. And the lawyers donate their dividends that are generated by good experience on those insurance policies. They donate them to us, and we use all of the dividends in any given year, plus some of our investment funds, to make grants. And over our history, we've made over $325 million worth of grants. In any given year, we make grants of about a little over $7 million.
Wow. And I see that you give a lot of grants in one year. It's not that it's all going to one place, right?
Typically in the past, we made grants primarily to the American Bar Foundation, which is an independent research organization, and also to the Fund for Justice and Education. And the American Bar Foundation, as a research organization, takes those funds and invests in research that looks at things like access to justice, for example, as one of their major projects. The Fund for Justice and Education is the fundraising arm of the American Bar Association. And as such, they support a wide array of projects. The Commission on Homelessness is one, for example. Aid to veterans is another. They have such a wide array of really good causes. And almost 8 years ago, we started a program called the Opportunity Grants. And what we do with those, this is something that both of us are really, truly excited about. They are small grants that we make to legal service organizations.
Right, that's what I was looking at. There's about 20 grants for about 19 to 25,000 each.
The typical grant size is about $25,000. And it's important to know that these grants are not given to support ongoing operations. That's not what they're for. They are for really seed money for folks to do new and innovative projects that they might not be able to get grant funds for from other sources because they're not ongoing. And especially during the pandemic, It was particularly useful in the legal service delivery community because they had to move away from actually seeing people in the office and yet still reach the underserved communities that they deal with. So a number of the grants during that cycle went to technology development.
Right, because the underserved community wasn't on the internet as much as the average person. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I could see that
I mean,
with it.
and they had new and really innovative ways of reaching those communities. For example, one of the first grants we made was for a justice bus in Kentucky. And what that did, we assisted them in purchasing a van, which they then equipped with all the technology they could possibly cram into it. And they take that justice bus through rural Kentucky and deliver legal services in that way. And I've noticed that over time, there have been other justice buses in various communities. So it's very heartening to see the development of things like that.
We get a lot of calls on GrantWatch from people that have a vision.
Mhm.
And it's, where are we going to find a grant for that? They just have this idea. And then we find, when we find them a startup grant, when there's something there for them, we see a few years later, the same idea happening again somewhere else. That's the best, when something's replicated in another community.
Oh.
I was looking at your website, and you have something really unique. You have a map that lets people know about eligibility. And that's very important, because I always tell people, don't waste your time. Check if you're eligible. That's the first thing before you write a grant. And you did it very nicely. You had a nice flow chart telling them, well, if you're this, you can go this way, that yes, no, you're not eligible. Do you still get grants where people are not eligible?
Yes, but over time we've refined that flow chart based on our experience, and we've also refined our application process by instituting letters of inquiry. And the letters of inquiry are now mandatory, and they're easy to fill out. We've got a form, it's easy to fill out, it doesn't take a lot of time, and someone can just give us a rough idea of what they have in mind, the timing, and a preliminary estimate of how they would expend any requested grant funds. And as I said, Izzy is new to this, so she has been dealing with the wave of the LOIs for this cycle. The due date for those is September 1st, and they are close for this grant cycle.
Right. How often do you have the grant available?
Once a year. It's a once a year annual cycle. The LOIs are due on the 1st of September. Then proposals for those folks who get through the LOI process, the proposals are due by October 6th. And then what happens is there's a staff review of the proposals. And then the members of our board get involved in reviewing the process. It's quite rigorous, actually.
Let's take it one step at a time.
Sure.
LOI is due September 1st. If
Yes.
someone was to apply, by when would they know if they're invited to apply with a full proposal? When would that be?
Right after Izzy reads the proposal. We get back to folks right away.
Mm-hmm.
I think there will be a little, just because of what I've seen in the cycles in previous years, there's a big balloon of LOIs that come in the last week before the due date and the last day of the due date. So there might be a little lag, and I'm not going to presume on Izzy's time, but she is very conscientious. So it would be very quickly.
Okay. So because they only have about from the time they submit till they submit the full, they have a month and another week, right? So they probably have about a month to 3 weeks. If they're doing an LOI, they should really know where their proposal is going and have it sketched out. They shouldn't just okay, I'm waiting to hear. They may not have enough time, right?
Right.
Okay, and I think it's
We're
very,
respectful of their time.
it's very commendable that you have the LOI because it takes a lot of effort on behalf of any organization to write a proposal. So you're taking away that time from being wasted if they're not on the right track. So that's great. Okay, so now they get the full proposal is submitted, and that due date is October
6th.
6th. Okay. And now it goes through the staff review. And this is where I always tell my people, I see that you have I don't know if it was the LOI or the full proposal that I was looking at. You have character limits, right? Or word limits?
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of times people go over and they think, well, it's really important, so I'm going to fill it in. And I always say to people, well, if you do that, your application may go in the trash because you're supposed to be able to follow directions. If you can't follow directions on an application, how are you going to run your program? So does that happen?
No, in fact, we were looking at a proposal that came in yesterday or the day before, and it had with it needs assessment results.
Mm-hmm.
And this came with an LOI, and my advice is that they should complete a proposal, but they should include the needs assessment. Because I think that strengthens what it says to us. We've taken a really good look. We know what the community needs.
Right.
And it's not based on anecdote. It's not even based on our own experience. Here we have something very tangible. So if someone, you should forgive me, commits the sin of exceeding the word limit, it's not going to, the proposal is not going to end up in the trash. In
It does
fact,
happen with the federal government, though. If you don't meet, if you don't fulfill every exact detail, it may end up there.
yeah.
But you're forgiving. That's very nice of you. But again, you don't want a 90-page proposal either.
No, and frankly, in a month, these folks are not going to write us a 90-page proposal. If they, I don't know among us who has the time to do something like that, but and we've had now 7 cycles of this, and I've not really seen that people have too much trouble, and we've refined the application so that it addresses some of the issues that have come up in the review process. And 2 of the things that were added explicitly in the cycle is we asked for any information on partners, collaborations that they might have within their community, because we're interested in, is the effect of what you're doing, how localized is it? Is it something somebody else can use? And that's
Right.
another factor, does this work well in another setting? Because that's sort of a plus on our evaluation grid. And just to tell you, it's reviewing proposals, as you know, has an element of subjectivity. You can't avoid it. But we have tried in developing a scoring grid for our reviewers, in refining our application to make it as objective as we possibly can. We're getting better. We're getting better at it.
Well, that's the thing about the internet. When you put something online, you can go back and you can fix it. Nobody's retyping the whole application, right? So you can always go in and say, oh, I think we can tweak this a little better. And you do. That's great. Izzy, when you read through these LOIs, is there anything that stands out that people should not be doing?
So there are a couple components to the opportunity grants that they have to be both new and innovative. And there are questions directly about those aspects of the project in the LOI. And I've noticed that a lot of times organizations will just re-say what they've said in the overview. And so I think really making sure that you cater to the question that's being asked, what really is new and how can you show us that it's new? What is innovative and how can you show us that it's something that we haven't seen before? So like making sure that you are actually catering to the question that's being asked, because we really want to know, what are you doing that we haven't seen before? What great ideas do you have?
Right. If you ask a question, you want the answer to that question. And that's really, some people just, okay, I'll fill this in, I'll paste that. But if it doesn't answer, and I say to people, give your application to somebody who knows nothing about your program and ask them to read it. Because that's the people that are reading your LOI or your application, they know nothing about your program. See if you got all the details in there. That's the best way to go. Now, when you get the application, is there anything that stands out that people should not be doing?
In the application process, they truly need to pay attention because there's a budget form. And we also, in our instructions and FAQs, set out what things we do not fund. And sometimes we're still seeing applications that will come in that will have, for example, requests for funding for salaries. We don't do that. And that's sort of the top of the list of things that we don't fund.
Right.
And we make suggestions about what is fundable. And this is something, and again, Izzy sees it in the LOIs, is how do you distinguish what you're proposing from ongoing operations? Truly has to be something new. That, it's like, you have an idea. That's when we want to talk to you, is right at that point.
New idea.
Yes.
And everybody can hear that, the new idea, which a lot of grants don't work on, right? This is the new idea and the vision that someone has from the beginning to the end of it. How is it going to work?
And we have funded things, which I find very interesting because, we focus on underserved communities. Some of the things that we focused on have been even simply the translation of court documents in various languages in some communities is huge. One of our earlier grants, and this really surprised me, is that there was no accepted Spanish translation of the Miranda warning. That just startled me that was not something that was out there.
And so people with boots on the ground, they know what's needed.
Exactly.
And now they have an opportunity to apply for it. That is phenomenal. So by when would they get the funding? I know you go through the staff review, and now you've wheedled it down so that you're ready to prepare it for a board meeting. How many usually get to the board meeting?
We don't take it to a board meeting. There are steps before that.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
We'd love to hear it. Everybody wants to know this.
Yes. It's, as I said before, it's a very rigorous process. And if a project proposal survives the staff review, then we have a committee. We have a grants committee of our board. And though the members of that committee and usually a couple of other board members volunteer, and we take that pool and divide the proposals across the various board members. So they're looking at proposals, and at that point, they're rating them as fundable if we have money, not fundable. The surviving pool is usually around 25 proposals that make it through those cycles.
Right.
And then what we do is we send those back to the reviewers, but they all have to read all of the proposals, so that what they're looking at is the full array and then scoring them on a grid with various requirements and scales. And there's
Right.
on a grid. And what we do with those grids when they're submitted, because everyone's looking at all the proposals, so there's no issue of any substantive differences that may, what one reviewer may like and another reviewer may not like. And then we take those scores and we take the top scores and we take the dollars that are available and match the two. And that's how we determine, how the grants are distributed. Then we go to the board, and the board ratifies usually the recommendations of the folks who read the proposals.
So last year you funded how many?
Well,
It's a nice amount. And
Yeah.
how many letters of inquiry? Do you remember how many you received?
over 100.
And then then how many grants were invited to apply?
I think we had 75
Wow.
that actually applied.
Mhm. So a lot of times this comes up where an organization hires a grant writer to complete the application, complete the LOI and write the application. And then they come back and they say, oh, the grant writer did a lousy job because we lost. And I say, you can't win every grant. There are a lot of applicants, and somebody may get a 96 score and you got a 95, and that was the difference if they were all high level. So do you score from 0 to 100, or do you have a different scoring system?
A different scoring system.
Okay, so how close could a winner and a loser be?
Very. It's again, everything that remains in the pot is set up so that we can look down the list, and then the dollars that we have available, we only have a maximum of $300,000 a year for these grants.
Right.
And if, for example, we have a grant that is $40,000 and the reviewers really like it, obviously that's going to affect how many folks we're able to give grants to. And I think we had one in the last grant cycle, but it was really 2 entities. And so it worked out that it really wasn't one entity receiving the larger grant. But
number 13 could have been highly fundable, but you ran out of money.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what people need to understand. We say in GrantWatch, you have to be in it to win it. And if you don't win the grant, use it again, take everything that you put together for this application, use it for someplace else, do the tweaks that you need. The program is still a good program. And then if it becomes available the following year and you still want to do it, apply again. Just keep going.
Yep. And we have given grants to the same organization, a couple of grants to the same organization. If they had a program, 1 year that was deserving of funding, and then they modified something or did something new that was really new and different. We've had a couple of entities that have received more than 1 grants. And as you say, we encourage people, if they aren't given a grant 1 year and the idea is still, tabled, but, they're really enthusiastic about it. And it has happened that an entity who submitted 1 year and didn't get the grant, in another year they did.
Right.
So
people shouldn't be discouraged. They really shouldn't. If they know they have a good piece of writing and the idea works, then you should just keep plugging at it.
Exactly. And frankly, the application process is pretty simple.
Yes, I saw it. It's really nice the way you did it. I love the fact that you did an Excel spreadsheet for them. When I was writing grants, I created my own Excel spreadsheet to mimic whatever form the funding source had, so I can write formulas into it. And here you did that for them. So that's great. You've done a lot of work for the applicants. You've made it simple, but they have to be thoughtful, and they have to answer the questions, and they have to be eligible. And I see that. Sounds like you have a great organization and a great team. And reading grants, I did that for the federal government at some point, and it is very subjective. They took apart a hotel when I went to DC, and they took out the beds from the bedrooms, and we had tables there. And some rooms, I always tell the story, had chocolates, and some rooms didn't, because people brought chocolates. And I felt like, well, if it's a difference between a 95 and a 96, the room with the chocolates, they were getting 96s just because people felt happier. The scores were, that slight difference. And so people have to understand that many things affect the score that they're going to get.
And sometimes I think when you look at the proposals and you see a proposal that is truly embedded in a community that hasn't been served before. And we had one of the LOIs that we received this time, and I was particularly interested in it because it proposes a pipeline to law school, but it starts in high school, not when people are a senior, but it's a 4-year program that starts when kids are freshmen, offers them opportunities in the summer to work with judges, to work with lawyers. So it truly is a pipeline, and it's not just that last senior year.
Which then only in the last senior year, it's only affecting the achievers. Whereas in lower grades, you're starting to get them to want to achieve. You're doing that motivation. That's phenomenal. I love it.
I did too. And it's just, I mean, I didn't know when I was in high school, perhaps I didn't care at the time, but I certainly didn't know what it was that lawyers did. You just don't, unless you have a parent or a relative, you just don't have to be familiar with that. And it's just, heaven forfend, you should have, contact with the criminal justice system. But this is something I really like this.
It's replicable with so many other professions.
Yes.
Once you bring in that into the high school, then why not bring in veterinary science, and why not bring it, a librarian? Why not bring these people in and create those internships?
Exactly. And it's not just career day. That's what's neat. It's more extended. It's real life experience. And they're looking to expand. They have done a trial, and they're looking to expand it to different places. I think it's a great idea.
I think a grant needs to be replicable. It needs to show the dissemination of the ideas. And then it needs to show how will you continue it when the funding runs out.
Exactly.
Sustainable, right? Those are things we always look for when writing a proposal, because that's what the funding source wants. The funding source wants to say, wait, we gave you this money, now we want to see what's going to happen. And you can look back on it, 5 years later and say, because of this pilot program, this many children were served, right?
And we also have a reporting requirement, and we ask folks to report halfway through the grant cycle, the years that they have, right, and then a final report. And I have to tell you, they're stunning. They're absolutely stunning what these organizations can do with a small amount of money. Is just, we really wish we had more money to do this, because you can see the impact on a community.
That's wonderful. I mean, with GrantWatch, we actually say to people, if you got a grant, let us know. And then we send them a coffee mug. It's right there on my bookcase behind me, a 17-inch latte mug, just because we want to say we celebrate with you, right? Because we know we're helping a lot of people. And then you're helping people when you give the grant. It just goes on and on and on. And we just all end up paying it forward. And that's what grant funding should be about. And we hope that that's where it's going. I tell the grant seekers, be in contact with the funding source after you get the grant. Say thank you. Even though you may have some reports, send a letter in between. Hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. Just keep that communication going, because it makes you feel good. It makes them feel good. And of course, you want to fund them again if they come up with something new. It's not over. And it should be an ongoing relationship. You should have pictures on bulletin boards of all these happy kids, that you served. And that's how we feel good about what we're doing in the nonprofit community.
And very often the recipients of these grants will take our logo. And when they have a listing of funding sources, they'll put the logo front and center. And to go back to the Justice Bus, on the Justice Bus, there is our logo.
That's how you keep it going.
Absolutely.
Right. The 990 report, you file that, right, every year. Can you explain to our listeners what they can learn from the 990 report, because they're public information at this point?
It's, 990s are classic. I mean, it's just the fact that you file one regularly is important for a nonprofit organization. You can see in our 990 where the grants are going. But we really try and focus on our opportunity grant recipients. They can go right to our website and see without having to wade through a 990.
Right.
They
I
can
see you tell everyone who you gave the funding to, which is really good, because people can understand, look, these programs that they funded were innovative. So they're not looking to just supplement the money that you need. They're looking for something really new. Don't apply, just because you need 5 more computers for your classroom or something to teach. You already have 10. That's not innovative.
Yeah. And I think our website, because, we have not only a listing of the recipients, but a little paragraph that describes why they received the grant. What are they doing? And I think that helps potential proposers of new projects. It says, oh, they funded this and they funded this. Maybe that will give some people some ideas about how they might enhance the delivery of legal services in their communities. The 990s are really, they tell you you're dealing with a stable organization. They tell you what the funding is. They tell you about the organizational structure, the management of an organization. But I really think, bottom line, from a person applying for the grants, again, the website is just so much more right on point.
Right. And you ask for their letter of determination.
We do. We absolutely do, because as a 501c3 ourselves, we can't make grants to entities that are not 501c3s. For example, we can't make a grant to bar associations because they tend to be 501c6s, and we can't be making a grant to them. But a lot of bar foundations, for example, have, or bar associations have bar foundations that have a different tax status. So we've been able to fund some projects for some of the bar foundations. But yes, that determination is absolutely critical.
So in certain states, you can be a not-for-profit organization, but that is not a federal IRS determination. And we get that a lot also, where people want a grant writer, because we also have grant writer team where people can find a grant writer, get matched up that way.
Yeah.
And they think they're a nonprofit, but they're not, because they're only within that state, so they can apply for state funds. But here they have to have that letter of determination, which is on the IRS website.
Yep.
And some people can't find it. They can go right there and look for it and print off a copy. Yep. So that's very important for them to know. Don't apply thinking if you just have the state.
Yeah.
And that takes about 6 to 8 months now to get, if they don't have it.
And that comes with the LOI, so we know right off the bat.
Right. And do you look them up? Do you double check if it's a correct letter?
The assumption is that this is not a world of fraudulent activity, and if they submit a valid IRS determination, do we check to see if they've been terminated? It's more likely we're going to go to their website and just see that they're an active organization and what they do, rather than going to GuideStar and just running through a bunch of determination letters.
You don't even have to do that now. It's all on the IRS website. You just plug in your number, you'll know. Yeah. Okay, that's great. And Izzy, I'm glad you had the job. So welcome aboard.
Are we? I mean, I can't tell you how delighted we are to have her.
It's probably
I try not to scare her with And you know how many will come at the last day.
Well, and I always tell people, apply early. Why do you have to wait till the last minute? If you have all your ducks in a row, get it done, and you'll be on the top of the list, right?
And also you're more likely to get some constructive feedback if there are problems with it, and that gives you a little more time in developing a proposal, rather than, submitting an LOI at the nth hour and then getting feedback, even if it's a week, later. You're looking at an October 6th deadline.
Mhm. Oh, so you send you'll send something back to the grant seekers saying why they may not be eligible, and then they can take another look and redo it? You give them a second chance, or is that what happens?
Yes, she does.
Yeah, when the LOIs come in, if they're not in a place to be invited to apply at that point, we like to review, and if there's something there, maybe it's just missing that new component, or maybe the budget is just being applied in a way that we don't support. We like to give feedback that lets them know why this isn't working for us right now and how it can work for us. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of really great projects, since we want them to be able to meet our requirements if they're, are in the right area.
That's wonderful. That really is. You took a lot of mystery out of the funding, the funding source today for a lot of people. I don't know if everybody's as kind and considerate as you are, but that's really great. And I think our listeners are going to be very happy to hear this. So I really have to get this video out to our people on our social media and let them know, and hopefully people will share it as well, so that they can apply in time.
Excellent. And if you're doing that, perhaps we can get Izzy to tell you what her phone number and email address is, so it's part of this.
Yes, go ahead, Izzy.
Sure. My email is IEI, S as in Sam, EN as in Nancy, at abenet.org. And my phone number is 312-988-6402.
Well, you heard it here today. And I hope if you have an innovative program in an underserved community that you complete your LOI and get it out as soon as possible. And thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. Keep up the great work.
Great. Thank you very much.